Hi everyone, welcome back to another anatomy episode. In today's video, we are going to go over the female and male reproductive system as well as a little bit of the urinary system. So this episode is just going to be the very basics of the reproductive system, and then when we get into our actual reproductive unit, we're going to go and dive more in depth. So starting off, let's start off with the female reproductive system. So we have your uterus right over here. This is your uterus, kind of like this dark red circle, and it is going to be right above your urinary bladder. Your urinary bladder is going to be the circle that is right under it. So this one right over here is your urinary bladder. Now, for the uterus, you have two kind of like openings. The first opening is this little part that is going upwards over here. That upwards part is known as your fornix. So fornix. And then right below it, we have another branch off of it, this portion over here, and then going on the opposite side, that is your cervix. So the cervix is the part that they kind of measure when you are giving birth to see how dilated it is, if the baby has breached or not, and whether you are ready to deliver. Now, coming out of the uterus, you have this kind of like tube-like structure over here going down the middle. That is your vaginal canal. So the vaginal canal. And then the very end of it, this circle over here, that is your vaginal opening. Vaginal opening. So when you are giving birth, that is where the baby would come through. Now on the exterior side, you have your labia minora, which is this first flap over here. It's a little bit smaller. So again, that is your labia minora. And then on the outside, the thicker one right on top of it or above it, this one over here, that would be your labia majora. So you have labia minora and labia majora. Then you have your clitoris, which is right over here. It's kind of like this like oval slash ball structure that is up at the top. So that is your clitoris, however you want to pronounce it. And then this fat pad that is kind of protecting all of your reproductive organs over here. This is known as your mons pubis. So right over there, mons pubis. Now moving back on into the kind of parts that are attached to the uterus. You have your ovaries. So this circle over here, that is your ovary. You have one on each side. And this is where all of your eggs would be stored. Then you have your fallopian tube, which is this arm that is kind of like wrapping around the ovary and like grabbing the egg almost. So the fallopian tube, also known as the uterine tube. Finally, you have the round ligament, which is this tan, stringy little structure over here. And again, that is your round ligament. It is attached to the fundus of the uterus, aka the top of the uterus. So it's attached to this area over here. And it basically just suspends and anchors the uterus down in place. to keep it stable and from moving around a ton. So this was pretty much everything for the female reproductive system. Pretty simple. It does get more complex the more you study it, and especially with different hormones that you guys might need to know later on. But for the beginning, pretty simple. Moving on, we are going to go to the male reproductive system. So you have your urinary bladder over here. In men, that is where it would be located. Urinary bladder. And then right below it is your prostate. So this circle structure over here in pink, that is your prostate. In men, this can become inflamed or infected, and then that is why some men could potentially get prostatic cancer. Next, you have the urethra that goes through the prostate and then reaching around to the spongy tissue. So your urethra has three parts in men. You have this first tube over there, and that is known as your prostatic urethra. Prostatic urethra. Then right below it, there is going to be a tiny segment. It is literally just this portion over here, this tube that goes through that little region. That is known as your membranous urethra. So it is very small. And then right below it, the largest part, wherever there is spongy tissue, so this whole region has spongy tissue, and that is why it is called the spongy urethra. Spongy urethra. Right over there. Now you also have your seminal vesicle. The seminal vesicle is going to be this pink little oval-like structure over there. To me, it almost looks like a bunny ear. If you think of the prostate as the head of the bunny, and then the seminal vesicle is the ear of the bunny. So that is where that would be located. And then finally, you have your bulbourethral glands. I am going to erase the line leading to the prostatic urethra, just so that you can see the bulbourethral gland better without all of the other annotations and depictions. This right over here, and I can even turn it red, that right over here, that little ball, that is your bulbourethral gland. So bulbourethral gland. It's a super fun name to say. And I often kind of think of a lot of the words for the male and the female reproductive system kind of reminds me of like Harry Potter almost to an extent, such as like corpus cavernosum. This word that is right over here, corpus cavernosum, I always thought of that as a very Harry Potter type of like spell sounding word. So this is everything for the male reproductive system. Um, Again, not too much. One more thing that is covered in the later units that you might need to know right now, depending on which anatomy curriculum you are in. You have your testes over here, which is this whole ball-like structure. So again, testes. And then around it, you have kind of this pink C-shaped looking thing over here. That little structure over there, that is known as your epididymis. And that's also another fun word to say. So that is your epididymis, and that is where that would be located. So that's everything for the male. And now we are going to go to the urinary system. So for the urinary system, you have your adrenal gland here up at the top. Adrenal gland. There are some important hormones that accompany the adrenal glands. If you want a video on hormones, let me know and I can make that as well. Then you have the kidneys, this bean-looking shape over here is your kidney. This one is a cross-section of a kidney, so you can see the internal structures, but you don't need to know them until the urinary unit. This yellow tube over here, that is your ureter, and you are going to have one on each side. So you're going to have two ureters in total, one on each side. The ureters are then leading to your urinary bladder, which is this structure over here. And the urinary bladder in this picture is a posterior view, meaning a backside view, but the picture right next to it over here, this is a front side view of the urinary bladder. Over here. And then you can see what the bladder would look like if it was cut in a coronal plane. So inside you have this white triangle. This white triangle is known as your trigon. So very simple to remember, kind of just like named based upon the shape. This yellow structure over here on the sides, so this whole thing, but the yellow part of it, that is your prostate. And then running through the prostate is your urethra, the peachy color. So that is your urethra. And it is, it looks like this just because it's a cut section. But if you see kind of for the male as well, you can see the prostate over here and then the line that goes through it, that is your urethra. So that is what it is depicting over here in this depiction. So that is everything for the urinary system. I hope that you guys found this video helpful. Please like and subscribe for more content in the future. And I thank you for all of your guys' just consideration. Good luck studying. You guys are going to do a great job. And thank you so much for viewing. Please leave your comments, concerns, questions in the comments. Thank you so much. Bye until now.